Sleeping in, maybe.
No, I've been up since 7.
Okay, all right.
Okay, here we go. We're going live. Figure this Facebook thing out again. Can you see it on your phone, Carl?
Hold on a minute. Let me look.
Oh, my internet must be really slow this morning.
You're coming across okay.
Am I?
How you would get her, you guys don't know, just be a low jab if you're moving around. Okay, we start.
I don't know, Mike, if it's up here yet or not.
Oh, it shouldn't. It should go now. Hey, good morning, everybody. So, welcome to Multifamily Unplugged, the #1 Saturday morning radio show. I think it's the only Saturday morning radio show, isn't it, Carl?
I think it is. It's the only one I'm on.
Hey, this is where we dive into unscripted conversation about multifamily real estate, property management, and current events that affect our business over the past week. Today's show is brought to you by My Core Intentions and your Focus Guide, where we both bring you mindset and multifamily techniques, systems, and principles to help you build your business. Hey, I'm Mike Morawski, and I am joined this morning by my partner and co-host, C. Gordon Moose, who we probably call Moose. What's up, Carl?
How are you, Mike? Good to see you.
It's good to see you. Hey, listen, go tell somebody that we're on the air and that we are live and that they need to get up and grab their coffee and sit back and enjoy this ride because it's going to be crazy this morning. So make sure you get your questions answered, put them in the chat, light up the chat this morning. Tell us who's here so that we know who's here live out on Facebook. Couple of housekeeping things. Remember, please go like us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. So subscribe and enjoy all that stuff. Hey, today we are joined by two people, Carl, husband and wife, Derek and Sophie Clifford. Hey guys, how are you?
We're doing great. Thank you.
Good. I'm really glad you guys are here this morning. I'm still trying to get my bearings over here, but hey, tell everybody where you are calling from.
Yes, sure. So we are in the California East Bay, it's East San Francisco Bay Area, far out from the Bay Area, but in the central part of the state. That's where we're coming out from.
So Carl, that's probably.
Yeah,
Carl,
I used to live in San Francisco. Where are you?
We're in Brentwood.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I used to have an office in Dublin and Pleasanton.
Yeah, that's great. We've lived in actually pretty close to both those places.
guys,
We're doing great. Thank you.
good. So that probably means they're not seeing this snow this morning, right, Carl?
Yeah, right.
I don't think so.
I did a clip yesterday morning on Facebook. I said, this is what I get for sleeping in the snow. So, and here it is again this morning, but you know, that's just, hey, we've been pretty lucky this year with the weather though, that's for sure. So one thing I want to say is that here on Saturday morning Unplugged, Multifamily Unplugged, we bring you over 50 years of combined real estate experience. And who knows what we're going to add to that this morning with Derek and Sophie. Hey, you guys, listen, why don't we jump in and, actually I have a question for you. I know that we were on Abel's meetup on Wednesday this week.
Yep.
Does anybody know who that was in the window with no shirt on?
That was pretty incredible. I think we've been trying to track that person down. I know that Melanie McDaniel and I have been like having a chat about that in her on one of her threads where she posted about that, and we're gonna find that person eventually.
Okay, I thought that was funny, and Abel handled it so well, you know.
He did.
So,
yep.
Hey, listen, why don't you guys tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, how you got in the multifamily space, what you guys do, and what you're looking to do.
Sure. Do you wanna start off?
Yeah. So I'm a naturopathic doctor. I have my own private practice, and prior to all this, I actually grew up in a family that invested in real estate. So I saw my parents invest in real estate at a very young age. So when I went to grad school, I actually decided, hey, I'm going to be here for about 4 or 5 years. I thought it would be a good investment to buy a condo or just a property and then later on sell it or rent it out and pay back my student loans. So
Yeah, and then from there, my family is not part of real estate at all. So, when I got to meet Sophie and, we got engaged and started talking more about finances and business, I still wasn't really quite convinced that real estate was the right way to go. But when we had to leave Washington State, because that's where her school was, unfortunately, the way, like, she had bought her condo about 2 months before the 2008 crisis. So unfortunately, like, she had bought the condo at the very top of the peak, and then literally the peak just dropped off. And even during the 5 years, that we were there in Washington doing grad school and trying to get residencies all set up, it still hadn't recovered all of its value from the crash.
Yeah.
So, but she got a residency here in the Bay Area, and we didn't want to leave that opportunity behind. But we didn't have the $80,000 check, to write for the difference between, the value of the house right now and the mortgage payoff. So what we had to do was we said, okay, well, let's just rent it out. And so we became landlords by default. And after that, we got our tenants in there. We didn't have any property managers, and we were so lucky because they were the best tenants ever. And they paid on time. They made things really easy for us. And on our drive down, I was talking to her and was like, we could do this again, right? Like, this isn't so bad. Why not, right? So that kind of opened up the floodgates. And from there, both Sophie and I, we started listening to podcasts on Bigger Pockets, and started with a single family portfolio. And when we first got started, we had nothing. And we went from 0 to about 12 properties in 9 months in our first year, just because we realized how powerful it was, especially investing out of state where you can get more bang for your buck. So that's what we ended up doing. And then after, maxing out our 10 loans for single family and small multifamily, we realized that we had to scale a little bit more. And another trip out to the market and a meeting with the wholesaler led us to an 18-unit reposition that we just finished a couple of months ago. And so we did a refinance, and we pulled out all of our original cash and more. So pretty successful on that. And now I'm working on a 37-unit in Indianapolis, and also doing some syndications. I have my own podcast. And so we're just trying to expand our footprint in the real estate space.
Hey,
Well,
I love that story that, you went dragging, or Sophie pulled you dragging and kicking, that you
Yeah.
didn't want to do any investing. And, all of a sudden here you are now just off to the races. Carl, go ahead. I knew you wanted to say
No, I
something.
was just going to say that's awesome. I mean, that's really great that, there's that combination of, getting in by default and then creating a design, you know what I mean, for your portfolio. And you're not trying, you're doing it. You guys are out there doing it. I mean, that's really great. And it's too bad we only have an hour, Mike, because I'm sure that we could talk for hours about your experiences and everything, the successes that you've had. So I just want to take my hat off to you. Really great job.
Thank you so
Thank
much. Yeah. During the journey, it wasn't an easy one, especially since we are both working full time as well. So all of this is being done part time, and in between, when we got started and started to do our first multifamily, we actually also wrote a book. Here it is, right here. It's called Part-Time Real Estate Investing for Full-Time Professionals, and we wrote this because I kept getting the same questions over and over, because my colleagues at work were seeing what we were doing as we were buying these properties. And, we would show up in the office, or at least I would come up into the office at like 7 a.m. And so my lights would be on. These are back in the days when we actually went to the office, right? Before COVID. But I'd be there, early at 7 a.m. And then during my lunch hour, I'd be back in my same breakout room, on the computer and doing what I need to do with this. And people thought that I was kind of possessed. And then once I explained to them and walked them through the math, I kept noticing patterns and answering the same questions over and over again, and thought that that would be a great basis for a book. So
And here's really, this is really crazy, Carl, right? How long did it take me to write my book? About 2 years, right? Ask Derek how long it took him to write his book.
Derek.
took me 30 days.
Yeah. See, Carl, I told you I would always bring smart guys on the show.
Mike, you've been writing that book for 30 years. I mean, 30
right.
years of experience have gone in that book.
I knew you were going to go there. That's funny.
Yeah.
Hey, let me just say hi to a couple of people. Danny, good to see you this morning. Hey, go get David, would you? And Aaliyah, good to see you. Trevor, hey, welcome. Eddie, good to see you. Rob, I'm glad you guys are here this morning. Hey, anybody else out there on Facebook, and there are a handful of people on Facebook this morning, throw some comments out there in the chat. And I like whoever is LGL322DL, welcome, brother. I'm glad that you're here this morning. Good to see you. Hey, Sophie, how hard was it to communicate with Derek while he was writing that book?
He literally locked himself away. Like I didn't see him for the whole 30 days. And I was like, what is he writing about? You know, he's just pouring his heart out. And it was really challenging because Derek, when he puts his mind to something, it's just laser focused. Like if he says he's going to get something done, he gets it done. And I'm really proud of him for everything. And what was really great was I got to see him from just the first thought, the first inkling of, hey, maybe I can write a book, and then to publishing it. So it was really inspirational. And he's probably thinking about his 5th book right now.
I think it's really great that you guys are a team too. You know, when I started buying buildings I was married at the time, and my ex-wife and I, who were still very good friends, we approached it from a team perspective. And I also like the idea. It's kind of funny. See, my dad was in real estate and owned some properties where her family did not. So it's kind of the flip flop, you know what I mean? But I think it's neat that you guys come from different perspectives from the real estate, in the real estate realm, and that you've been able to collaborate and I'm sure work on each other's each other's strengths to develop what you've developed. And so, my question for you is, what's your plan? I mean, do you guys have a plan? Mike's written a book too called Exit, the exit strategy, right? Or what's it called, Mike? Exit. Yeah, exit plan. Right. So I guess my question is, I mean, do you guys want to, and I'm sorry when I say guys, do you want to, are you looking to build a property management company? Are you looking to build, a portfolio of 1,000 units? I mean, what kind of walk us through what your plan is for the next, say, 3 to 5 years?
Sure. Maybe I'll let you talk about this first.
Yeah. So I think, at the end of every year, we sit down and we map out our goals. We map out our vision together. We also talk about what went well the previous year and what can we carry over to the next year. So we did that. And then we write out all of our goals and we stick them on our doors and we review them every morning. And I think that lays a really good foundation for the next 3 to 5 years, because we're just going stepwise. We're just building upon that year after year after year. So the overall vision is just financial and location freedom. And we both, from the beginning, when we first met, we knew that was the goal. But in terms of, the sitting down, the communicating together of what's the next step, that, that's not always as clear. And so we have to really rely on communication, daily communication, to make sure that we're still moving in towards that goal together.
So what's interesting is being a married couple in the multifamily space. How does that work for you guys? And I know that you guys kind of talk about this on your show a little bit on your podcast. How does that work for you?
Yeah, so obviously having a shared vision is the most important thing, because if there's no vision where, we're both working towards a common goal, then, there's no, the inspiration and the energy that we can bounce off each other and the ideas, there's no context behind that, right? Because if you're not in agreement from the beginning to understand what direction you're headed in, one person might have the understanding that we're going in this direction, but the other person has the understanding we're going in this direction. And so not only does it make it causes strain in the relationship because there's distance that you're creating, right? But it also makes it frustrating because the energy gets misdirected, or it gets misplaced, or it's not efficient, right? So with multifamily specifically, I think that number one is getting on board with communication and making sure your vision or what your goals are is shared. And that for us is locational and financial freedom. And then the second is understanding who is good at what, understanding where the natural strengths are and how to divide the roles. So yes, you do need to understand a little bit about how multifamily investing works and all the activities involved. But as long as the communication and vision is there, you're going to figure that out. So that's why it's so important to start with the vision, the communication first. So generally the way it works right now for us is I'm doing a lot of the underwriting and the capital raising and a lot of the marketing and the media, because I like to talk with people. I'm always out there. I like video. I like that. And then Sophie is helping with building some of the internal networks with her from some of her client bases. So she helps bring me some people to talk to help, bring into the fold as warm leads. And she's also very, very good at like design. So whenever we have an offering, she'll help out with that. And we're starting to get her more looped into underwriting as well. And so as long as we have the dialogue continuing and our vision is the same, our roles, we can start morphing and delegating to each other or to our virtual assistant to help us be successful in our business.
That's interesting. So here's what I'd like to know. How did you decide together, separately, however you decided this, to go and do this 37 deal in Indy? So, away from your home, it's out of your market, it's in a different area. Walk through that process, how you did that.
Sure. So obviously everything starts with the conversation. But I have some boots on the ground out there that I trust and have known for many, many years in Indy, because that's where my existing portfolio is. So, I have a large network of investors out there. And this is actually a really funny story, but my boots on the ground was just driving around and looking for properties to purchase. And what we were going to do is start calling owners directly. At the same time, we've already pulled a Reonomy list. So we are, we looked at all of the properties in the Indy area between 5 and 50 or 60 units. And so we're systematically dialing each owner that looks like it's owned by a single individual. That way it's a lot easier to establish the rapport. And if they have more properties elsewhere, then we can build that up. But my boots on the ground was driving by. He snapped a picture of the address and the building. And I basically used the Indiana LLC search function to find out who the owner was, and then did a free people search and found the owner, and then called and emailed the owner, and then they responded back. And the ironic thing is that for this particular property, he said, we just listed it with the broker 2 weeks ago. Oh. So, and then the broker I happened to know. So a pretty interesting conversation ensued with the broker at that point. And, we started working together, and right now we're looking to get it under contract right now. Probably early next week is what we're looking at.
Are you from that area originally, or how do you have contacts there?
No. So, when we first started investing out of state, we knew that we couldn't afford property here in the Bay Area because we didn't even have our own private residence. But we knew that we wanted to get some equity out there. We wanted to start building some passive income, and also building equity and debt pay down and all those wonderful things you get with real estate. So we started looking out of state and found some local meetups here in the Bay for people that are already doing it out there in out of state. So the one meetup that we really trusted and the people that we liked in that group, that circle, they were buying in Cleveland, Indianapolis, and Kansas City, which are, they were strong markets and still are very strong markets. And so we just happened to fall into Indy. It was the first one we researched. I bought like a turnkey or two there when we first started. And then it just the momentum just kind of took off, as you may know.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned Reonomy. Reonomy, for those of you that don't know, is a great site. I use it every day. For searching, you can search properties, you can search locations, owners, and everything else. So it's really great. And, the other thing that for people that are listening is, there's a lot of really great stuff that I hope you're getting out of this conversation, like the importance of having a partner that you can balance your strengths, right? And you happen to have the benefit of being, married and life partners. However, a lot of people, when they get into real estate, are just looking for financial partners or for business partners. And it's just as important. Mike's had partners before, I've had partners before. You want to make sure that you do understand each other's personal goals and professional goals. You want to make sure that you do lay out, what am I good at? What are you good at? And what are the gaps, in the skill sets that we need to succeed or that are required to succeed. And then the other thing is that you're not afraid to go outside of your market. Listen, when I lived in San Francisco, it's one of the reasons why I moved back to Chicago. I couldn't afford, I mean, actually, I take that back. What I could afford was about that big. It was like a postage stamp, and I was living in San Francisco. So there's just a lot of really great stuff that in this conversation that I hope people are picking up on.
Thank you.
Yeah, a lot of good things have been talked about. So talk about in today's marketplace, what you would advise any investors coming into the market. And I want you to look at it from two perspectives, right? So the brand new investor just thinking about getting their feet wet, and somebody who's been in the business for a while, because I think that you guys have some good experience on both of those areas. And, so share your thoughts around that.
Sure. So I have two things that come to mind, and I think for Sophie, I'm going to let her step in and see if she has anything to add before I jump in here and start dominating everything.
Well, I can speak to the beginner, because when I first bought my condo in Washington, I was a complete beginner, because like Derek was saying, I bought at the top of the market, and then a year or two later, it was half its value. And I graduated with, so much student loan debt. And I had to move to California for the residency. So it forced me, one, to learn how to be a landlord, two, how to property manage on my own, because I didn't have the money to pay a property manager at the time. So it was really, the advice I would give to any beginner is just to allow yourself to be in the process, to be open to new things. Because the fear, the uncertainty will always be there, but I think for some people it paralyzes them. And I just want to say, jump in head first, because you won't know until you actually go through the process.
Yeah.
Derek, before you go, I just want to comment on that. I think, Sophie, you are so right on about the fear paralyzing people, because so often I find that, with people I coach and students I work with, and investors I work with, that they just get stuck. And when I ask people, I say, hey, what's your biggest roadblock? They go, I'm afraid I can't do it. So when you really dig down, that's what it is, right? When any of us can do anything that we want, it becomes a choice, and putting our mind to it. So
Yeah, if I could just say something real quick, the other thing is, listen, if I thought about all the money that I lost or walked away from or left on the table, I would probably jump off a cliff, you know what I mean? However, I look at it from a different perspective. It's education. That experience that you had in dealing with some conditions that you had no control over. I mean, you had no control over the market or what was going on in the economy. However, I bet that if we really talked about it, you would say that you learned some invaluable lessons. So, the money that you lost or that you didn't gain, or however you want to put that, that was education. I mean, and you learn by doing and by taking those hard knocks. And I'm sure those lessons have helped you as you moved on. So I just wanted to, let people know that, there's nothing wrong, and you will make mistakes. Even if you have a coach like Mike, you're going to make your own mistakes. He's not going to let you make the mistakes he made, but you're going to make your own mistakes. And when you look at it from the perspective of learning and moving forward, that's where the value is.
Oh yeah, 100%. Everything we've done has been an investment in ourselves, and we look at it as just tuition we're paying, and the experience is, just invaluable over the years, because it helps us realize that, once we get through it, we're like, oh, we've done that. We've completed, that lesson. We can move on to the next. And then as as the situations get tougher and tougher, we have more resilience, we have more strength, and we have more just tenacity to be able to push through. So absolutely 100% agree with you.
Yeah. I think expanding the capacity, and especially, again, doing this with your spouse, doing it with someone that you can share these things with, provides you two things. It allows you to, put a sanity check on some of your, on what you're thinking, right? Because let's face it, right? If you can't explain it in a way that makes sense to a beginner, especially in real estate investing, right? Then there's probably something wrong, right? And you probably need to understand a little bit more about it before you actually jump in. If you can't explain it to someone, right? That means that you don't quite understand it yourself. And B, having someone there who's got your back to create the space behind you, right? Even if they're just there to support you and they don't get it, they don't have any interest in being involved, if they're supportive of you and allowing you to work in the space by either helping you with dinner, right? Like normally, if that's your responsibility, if you say, look, this is a really important goal to me, now if your spouse can help pick up the dinner or create some physical or time space for you, then that's a partnership already. That's already enough where you guys are working together. You're both in a vision where you agree that some things has to change from the current status quo. So, and you get some extra benefits in your relationship from that. There's more trust, there's more transparency, and everything else kind of starts to bleed into one another. And it just feels better to be more connected and more intimate with your spouse that way.
Yeah. Very true. Very true. So what do you guys see yourself doing more of this year? So I know you're going to do this indie deal, but beyond that.
Yeah, so right now I am raising capital. So my focus is going to be on 100 unit plus apartment complexes, and I have 3 markets in mind that both Sophie and I are interested in pursuing. It's the Colorado Springs market, the Indianapolis market, and then San Antonio, Texas. So we're focused on those 3 geographical areas and just looking to work with really great operators, boots on the ground in those spots. Yeah. And we want to be capital raisers and good stewards of investors' money. We like working with investors. We like educating investors. And so this puts us in a perfect position to be able to do that. And this type of niche that we're working on really allows both Sophie and I to work together in our natural strengths to maximize our output.
So how do you qualify of all the MSAs, the areas? Because the areas you just heard of, I don't know that much about the Colorado market, but Texas, clearly, Indiana. I'm a Midwesterner. I'm from Ohio, Cleveland. So how do you guys narrow in on that and determine we want to do San Antonio instead of Nashville, or we want to do Colorado Springs instead of Denver? I mean, what's your, what could you say to that?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. I think that beyond what everyone else tells you about job data and population growth, and where major employers are headed, and just the way the demographics are shifting, that's obviously one thing that keeps it that we keep into account. But really, it's where our existing networks are. Because if we expand on those markets, right? In San Antonio, we have a network there, I guess in Austin, but Austin is really, really hot. And so for me, it doesn't seem like a really good, at least from my perspective and my investors, the way I've been educating them, it's not a good fit because I'm looking for yield, not for appreciation. That's just how my philosophy in investing. And so San Antonio is that area where we have family there, we have connections, we have, some sort of network there that we can continue to grow. Indy, I've got the network there, and then Colorado Springs is new to us, but I grew up there. I spent 20 years, in that market growing up as a kid, and just the growth that I've seen is amazing. And my dad is a contractor, and we have plenty of family friends out there and people in real estate that's been in property management. So we're just trying to expand in those areas where we're already established to maximize our investors' safety and returns.
And Mike, I know you're a huge network guy. So, again, for people listening, it goes beyond, I mean, obviously they look at the finance, the general demographics and everything else that everybody looks at. But I think the real gold nugget, as my buddy Danny Barrero says, the real gold nugget in the response that was just given is they focus on their network. The network is so valuable. And Mike, I know you're a huge network guy.
Yeah. So Derek, here's what I'd like you to do. can you explain for our listeners, because we have a lot of listeners who listen in who are new, just getting their feet wet, the difference between yields and appreciation?
Sure.
You made that comment and I said, oh boy, he needs to explain that. So
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So the difference between yield and appreciation is pretty simple. Appreciation, that's pretty self-explanatory. You just buy a house and you wait for the value to increase. And it's usually by outside market forces, or you can sometimes go in there and like put in new granite countertops and make it more appealing to an end buyer. But generally, most of your profit's going to come from the sale. That's the appreciation. A yield play is one where when you buy it, it's cash flowing, it's throwing off enough profit so you can pay all of your expenses and your debt at the end. And it's a healthy enough margin to where it's attractive for investors to put money in at the beginning, and then they collect a return the entire time. The reason I like yield, Mike, is because when you play on yield plays, you get to pick when your exit is. When you buy on appreciation only, you can force some of it, but you're just waiting for market forces to happen. And sometimes, I mean, as you've seen with 2008 or, even where we are right now, things don't happen the way they're supposed to. And meanwhile, you're waiting for something to happen to be able to have options. And so I don't necessarily like that type of approach.
So Derek, I bring that up and I wanted you to clarify that because my philosophy has always been short-term cash flow and long-term wealth. And you just said it a different way, but we got to the same place with two different explanations, right? So I teach investors, hey, how do we create short-term cash flow and long-term wealth? So if you have a combination of both, that deal is better than just one or the other, right? So I like your philosophy though, because the cash flow is what will get somebody out of the rat race a lot quicker and get you to the end result a lot quicker. Hey, there's just a couple of comments in the chat. Danny says, attention to the details and the size of the network is where the profits are. And Danny, I couldn't agree with that more. And one thing that I would say too is that, and I heard this the other day and I said, man, this just makes so much sense. And that is that your net worth is equal to your net worth. Carl, goes back to what you were saying, it's about the people around us. It's about the smarter people around us. We don't know everything. I've been in the business 30 years. I don't know everything. I keep learning. I learned from you guys this morning, right? So, and look at the people who you surround yourself with right now. If the 5 closest people to you right now are not where you want to be in 5 years from now, then you probably need to raise your standards and put people in your life that are smarter than you, doing more than you, more successful than you, and seek that level, because your network is equal to your net worth.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you, Mike. As a matter of fact, Sophie and I were just talking a couple of days ago about how we heard a long time ago a Jim Rohn quote that said, the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your communication. And just now, thinking on that quote, I remember that it was really important because it was so potent, right? It was something that was one sentence long, but seemed to capture a lot of ideas. And, the quality of your life, that's a big thing. So I used to remember tucking that away, but I didn't quite understand what that meant, before I started networking and getting involved in building my network and working on my communication skills to be more influential, be more persuasive with other individuals. And so, just last week, that quote came up somehow, and I just realized how potent it was and how true it is. And maybe you guys have seen the same thing as true.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And, for people that are new investors, Mike and I talk about this all the time. Even if you've never bought a piece of property, you don't have any experience at all, because I don't care who you are, if you're John Buck or Sam Zell or anybody on this phone call, we all pretty much, unless you inherited a portfolio from your family, started with one property. And most of us remember that first property. I mean, for me, it was an 18-unit building that I made so many mistakes on. And the way that I attracted an investor for that particular property was I put the property under contract. I didn't have the money to close. And my mentor and coach, Bob Proctor at the time, just said, go, do you want to buy the property, put it under contract. He said, the money will come. I said, where's it going to come from? He said, wherever it is right now. He goes, I don't know where it's going to come from. He said, but get out there, put yourself out there, tell people what you're doing, communicate, right? And start networking. And sure enough, within a week, out of nowhere, apparently, what seemed to be nowhere at the time, I found my investor, right? And so, having a strong network, leveraging what you've already had built over the course of your life, and communicating, right? Telling people what you're up to, and having a concise a story behind that. And that's that communication that you just referred to, being able to articulate, what it is you're doing, why you're doing it, who you want to work with, what your end game is so important. And when you do that, not only do you start to perfect the articulation of what you're doing in your communication, but you're going to attract other people that are listening for that and go, you know what? Wow, Indianapolis. Yeah, I've heard really great things about Indianapolis. And, I've got money in my 401k that's not doing anything. Maybe I should hop in with these folks because they know what they're doing. My point is, when you communicate and you're very clear and you know what you're talking about, you'll attract people that will help you succeed, and you'll all succeed together.
Yeah, I think that's so valuable. Thank you for sharing that. And I couldn't agree with you more on it. It's so, so important, especially nowadays when we're also interconnected, right? Because whatever we say is, I mean, for instance, take this podcast, right? Like, this will be recorded in the internet for forever, and it'll be shareable. It'll be available for anyone else to understand and to digest. And so everything that you say can get amplified, and it can be re-messaged and repackaged. So that's why the quality of communication, not only with people outside, but also inside of a relationship, is so, so important these days. And sometimes I'm concerned that I don't see that happening very much, out there. There's no emphasis on that.
So critically important to remember what you just said, because I try to tell my kids that all the time. Hey, be careful what you say, be careful what you put out there, because that could come back to haunt you. And in 20 years from now, you might be trying to get a job and not be able to get it because of something silly that you said today. So, as educational as this can be, and as fun as this could be, there's also that fine line of, just kind of be cautious sometimes of what you do say, because you could be in a pickle, right? So
100%.
hey, listen, I just wanted to comment, Derek. I love Jim Rohn, and Carl's got a couple of his favorites too, but Jim Rohn, just for years and years and years, and he's somebody that, you can go out on YouTube today or any of those platforms and just, download all kinds of his stuff. And he's just got so many great things to say. So
yeah, he's one of the top 10 for sure.
Yeah, he's one of the trainers of the trainer, right, these days. And everything he says is so like, it's classic. I didn't, for many years, I didn't even know what he did, like, I didn't even know what he was trying to sell or anything. It didn't matter to me because his content was just so great. And, oftentimes I remember driving into, the refinery is doing one of my old jobs. I would always listen to his content over and over again, and it just transformed me, right?
So success leaves clues, right? This is what I talk about this a lot, right, Carl? So success leaves clues. And if we listen to successful people, you just said it, Derek, you listen to him over and over and over again. It's like when I went in the real estate business and my buddy made me that tape, and I listened to it over and over and over again, and I just implemented those techniques. And all of a sudden, I did 78 transactions my first 8 months in the real estate business. So it just, because if you follow what other successful people do, you will ultimately be successful.
Do you mind if I offer something up here, Mike? Because you said,
maybe do we need to talk about it offline first?
No. Well, I think you or Carl said that the quality of your life is determined by the 5 people. You're the average of the 5 people that you're around, right? The cool thing about this concept that we just talked about is that if you're listening to Jim Rohn every day, or if you're listening to a biography about Abraham Lincoln, or if you're listening to great people, and you're doing that long enough, they become part of your circles. And so even if you don't have, like, if you're starting out and you don't have necessarily influential people around you that you can access, there's so much information out there for so little price. Tap into those resources. Go to Audible, like invest the $10 a month or whatever it is, and get yourself constantly surrounded by successful people that will inspire you, whether it's their story, whether it's their message, whether it's just who they are as a person and the story that they're telling. That's really, really important. You can add them to your circles just by going on and finding them and searching them. So,
you don't need to know them. You know what I mean? It's, I'm a big Napoleon Hill guy with Think and Grow Rich. And, I just got off the phone last night with Don Green, the chairman of the foundation, where I'm going through a certification program, and in one of the chapters, Napoleon Hill talks about your invisible counsel. You don't have to know Jim Rohn or Anthony Robbins or Bob Proctor or Dr. Wayne Dyer, which is one of my favorites. He passed away. You don't have to know these people. You can still tap into their energy and you can still tap into their knowledge by listening to them. And it does have a positive, listen, if you're listening to positive people, positive, powerful, successful people, it's going to have a positive, powerful, successful influence on you. If you're doing just the opposite, it's going to have an opposite influence on you. So yeah, I don't know one successful person that I know, highly successful person that can't point to somebody that motivated them or somebody that they listened to on a regular basis and just absorb, those little axioms, like Jim Rohn, right? The quality of your life is the quality of your communication. That makes you think about, I know for a fact, and I've never even met you before besides today, I know that when you're having a communication with an investor or a seller or a buyer, that has a subconscious influence on you and it elevates your level of communication. So yeah, surround yourself with powerful people, successful people.
yes, absolutely.
Hey, let me just, speaking of successful people, I need to say hi to a couple of people, Joe Tucksher and Larry Dean. Good to see you guys this morning. Glad you're here. And wave hi again if you get a chance. So what else can you guys share with us this morning?
Yeah, so I think that really we have a podcast called Elevate Your Equity, and inside this podcast, we are trying to help people first navigate their own marriage or partnership and understand how that would work in a real estate investing context. So no matter where you are, if you already are established but your spouse isn't involved, or if you want to get started and you're both interested as partners, or maybe one person is really like not interested at all or has like even an aversion to it, this podcast is for couples. It's for anyone who is either married or is in a relationship, or maybe even not, or is looking to get into a relationship, and who is looking to invest in real estate or already has a portfolio and just doesn't know how to kind of realize that synergy. Because I would say that if you're not leveraging your spouse somehow, you're missing out on your biggest ally, your biggest cheerleader, the person that is most invested in your success with you, and they're not with you. So that's why we're so passionate about that message, is that you've got to, you have to have your spouse on board if you've got one. And if you have partners, you got to treat them the same way. And make sure that there's open communication. And so that's really what we're passionate about. And we invite anyone to ask us any questions about any topic related to that. And we have plenty of podcasts and content out there for anyone who's interested in learning more.
And what's pretty neat is I'm going to be on and I'm going to talk about how I missed the red flags in my marriage and why I'm not married anymore. So
Yep.
That'll be an interesting conversation. Hey, while we're on that subject though, why don't you tell people how they can go get a hold of your book? Because we're getting close to the end here. So if people want to talk to you guys, how do they reach out to you? How do they get a hold of your book, Derek?
Sure. Yeah. So everything is on our website. It's elevateequity.org. All they got to do is type that into the search bar, and you should be taken straight to our webpage. There's links there for podcasts that we've been featured on, and pretty soon we'll be adding the podcast that we have ourselves inside there. That's being worked on right now. There's links to the book there, or you can simply just type in my name, Derek Clifford, in Amazon, and the book should pop up right there.
And what was the website one more time? I'm putting it in the chat.
It's elevateequity.org, 2 E's in the middle.
Equity.org. Okay, yeah.
Yep. And then I'm also very active on LinkedIn, so feel free to just connect with me. Either my page is Elevate Equity or me, Derek Clifford. And then you can also get a hold of us on Facebook. And again, just search me or Elevate Equity, and we can add you to the tribe where I've got some exclusive things for people that are in our group only. So
Derek, 1 R or 2 Rs?
DEREK.
You get it, Carl? DEREK.
Yep, Clifford, right?
You got it.
Awesome.
Thanks for doing that, guys.
Yeah, no, thank you. Hey, listen, any last comments or thoughts this morning? How about you, Sophie? Jump in here and, let's leave the listeners this morning with something positive that they can go and implement immediately.
Yeah, just when you're thinking about doing something, don't just think about it. Take some action, start breaking it down into achievable steps, and just take that first baby step towards the overall vision. Because once you do, like you said in the beginning, Mike, you overcome that paralysis and you overcome that fear, and really it opens amazing doors.
It's just like if you use that acronym SMART for setting goals, right? SMART goals, and you start to look at, are they attainable? Are they realistic? Can you put a time frame on them? Are they achievable? Now you really start to break them down, and that's perfect, Sophie, that, people can overcome all that fear if they just, put their mind to it, right?
Yeah.
And Mike, look, can I just listen, you guys, Mike and I have been doing this. We have a lot of fun doing this. And I really love having inspirational people. You guys are inspirational. You guys really, this has been fun for me. The time flew by like that, but you guys are, for anybody that's thinking about getting into real estate, you guys you're an inspiration for them. And I know I tell Mike this all the time, when I got involved, I made so many mistakes. I wish that when I got involved, I had an opportunity to listen to a podcast or show like this and be inspired by you guys. So just thank you for inspiring our audience. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and if I may say one more thing to add on to Sophie's note, if there's people out there that are looking to get started or even grow to the next step, let's say that someone's ready to go from single family to multifamily, I think that you've got to go into your first investment as if you got to look at it not from a financial perspective, but from a intellectual return perspective, because you don't know what you don't know. And so just take faith in the fact that you're going to be making the right decisions as you need to. Don't make, don't make a terrible investment, obviously, right? Don't just lose a whole bunch of money. Do a little bit of homework, but just make sure that whatever you do first, you're going to learn something from it. And just understand that when you shift your perspective from trying to maximize every ounce of profit out of an investment, which will create fear, just look at it as, okay, I'm going to take action now because I'm going to learn something that's going to lead to the next one. And so once you have that shift, you're going away from the analysis paralysis and you're entering the realm of taking action and getting somewhere. So that's just my advice, right? And the best way to do that is to listen to positive people that lift you up and motivate you to keep moving and keep your spirits high as you're learning these hard lessons, right? So that's all I wanted to end with.
Yeah, great advice. Thanks for being here. Hey, Carl, thanks for being here this morning. It is always a pleasure to see you on Saturday morning and have coffee with you. Listen, if you guys would just hang on for a minute, and as we end this, just sit around. Carl, you too, just hang on for a minute. Hey, everybody, thanks for being here. Everybody on Facebook Live, thanks for being here this morning. It was great to see you, and the comments out there were just crazy this morning. Good to see everybody on Zoom. We're here every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. for Multifamily Unplugged, where you get real, raw, unscripted multifamily information, sometimes some craziness, and you never know where Carl was on Friday night and what Saturday morning's gonna look like.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was expecting